Hello, Americans, YouTubers. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a journalist, no, I'm not police. I've recorded them since founding. We could discern. They have been with all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers, the interbranch, the intelligence. Many ways they've been in the news at the same time. They planted the same sequence shifts, predicate acts, self-valid uses of wire crime acts and methods where they fake, change, and hide what's actually recorded over phones. And I didn't even know about this until the news pretended it. But it's recorded other ways too, because the kids who did go down and speak with the police when I was a kid, they did it to have me make it look like I knew, like a Chris Walters. They sequence shifted. Increasingly, these are people tied to child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced, proven. And I recorded them forcing one with more, and they have interbranch kids and foreign ones. Forgiveness is because there's also other involved. They have overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Increasingly, there are connections every year since the World Trade Center attack, intercities, with people all tied to the same house, involved with a folklore. They're reportedly related to them with the same last name, and other people tied to that with that. And it's saying, in other words, you guys have been putting fake things in databases, and these are people with all sides of criminal and civil cases, including next to the World Trade Center, the morning of the World Trade Center attack. I was next to the World Trade Center towers. Now, but I put a link to a Social Security guy on there. He's talking about medications. He's saying he's making examples. For example, these people are not defending they're making voting what it doesn't mean. They're collusions with all kinds of organized crimes with Social Security, but they also have relative delusions. And this is also because they came through campuses that keeping them pretending things are debatable that are not. Our founders communicated for us to understand, as nature shows us too. James Madison's plan, they have it replaced where it's the only correct answer. Besides a breaching method forced people to protest against against the T tax and all that, but more so, it was James Madison's plan. That's why they would leave records saying they were doing it to protest T tax while there was still slavery entrenched northern colonies, slavery even entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly against Native Americans, colonists against colonists, colonists against Native Americans. Every human difference applied through systems tactically bridged from the one that is generating individual species bodies, each one made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. So, for example, this guy's trying to make examples, offensively saying that we can't define what a woman is. These are people, in other words, obviously other species bodies have male, female, and each one of them is a distinct species body, an individual species body made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies, every individual species. So what is that? And we're not generating it how there are all these different species that way. And they're not generating it. But it's something that both we and they are, which we are not, but we are it anyway. The identity of all nature. So there's a scientific value. There's a need to discern it relative to that. It's the same thing generating why and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes. All exceptions, exception nature too. Show that they come with how it's showing us too, that it uses exception nature in ways that no other volume couldn't mimic. Otherwise, it demonstrates. It can be discerned. See, humanity has been using systems syntactically appreciated differences A through Z. Appreciated tactical ulterior from how both nature and our founders communicate to have differences appreciated. There are all kinds of organized crimes and organized crimes methods with locations /S and names associated with Social Security. And the differences of guilt with the intelligence there or next to those locations, like next to Fox Connecticut News, Are people increasingly involved with Main Street, and next to the state capitol? Involved also with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, including female judges, black and white female judges, with these ones with sexual and medical offenders of kids, leaders of kids. They're putting mass fake transcripts into databases, even putting fake transcripts with fake conversations between people and other patients, especially if they're different, if they are not, or if they are intelligence, unmarked police forms, because these are people with agencies that don't, and with interbranch forging and switching names, ones that are supposed to identify themselves. Through administrations, they're refusing to identify themselves. They're lying about their motivations. 3 times people from Hartford Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with their patients. They have a whole bunch of people tied to it as a Kevin Dillon, who I never had a word of conversation with. Also involved with some Mendez police who pretended to be a conversation with them at the Wethersfield police station. And they attached my Saudi friend that they knew apparently before I knew her to collusions with them. Also with people, with the Wethersfield police, people tied to them, confessed the name, Scalora involved with them, with some untimely deaths, and retired police chiefs with their family members and their intimate ties with their family members themselves, like a Jessica Cintron, that they're affecting confessions to me too, in sequence, yes, with a Jonathan Maiano. I had nothing to do with Jonathan Maiano until right after my car broke, when I was having to do my senior year for a second time. Is one of the ways he made confessions to me and filled in things. His name had been repeated to me a bunch of times. I mean, they timed where I was going to be and had my neighbor repeat that. So then to make it look like I knew where they were doing. I did not hang around with my neighbor. I never partied with them. Tried to make a fake look like once by putting a cup in my hand with people involved with Korea. Increasingly, people involved with Korea are involved with a Ray Kalala and a Joe DeMoro and a O'Brien family and a Kevin Harris, involved with the daughter of a principal I had who was involved with Korea. And he's involved with Kevin Harris, his family is involved with medical offenders of kids, people with the databases at campuses, people with the security next to campuses. There are a bunch of probate court judges and superior court judges involved with the same house, involved with the extended family members with sexual medical offenders of the kids further. And intercity, some murders and untimely deaths, confessions. They know that I had these things confirmed to me on Facebook. They're already were shown they were recorded using Facebook and readings of statutes and precedents criminally foreign influence. The same house has collusions interstates and with the court, with the names on both sides of the case and the court. The Ninth Circuit Court, the morning of the World Trade Center attack, short term and long term before that, in the attack context that morning, and since, as collusions also with ones with cases in Connecticut used to plant fake things, fake ties, so they could confirm things fake. Because this is a breaching method that uses and has used all natures of investigations, investigators, their family members, their campuses, other natures of conjunctions to them, used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. So there are more scams with Social Security, stealing more money. And while they have delusions that are relative to Black pupils, we have Black pupils' whites of eyes. We have the same color eyes. We have nature itself directing, communicating to us about difference. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. We have eyes distinctly from the other species bodies of individual bodies, but also non-distinctly. We have them simultaneously with them, but also further hyper-simultaneous. We have relativity / hyper-relativity discern. This is a hyper-relativity theorem. We have Black pupils, they're whites of eyes. And we didn't generate and they didn't generate, the other species bodies didn't generate how all the different species bodies have these qualities, aspects in nature, distinct but also non-distinct. and simultaneous, because we also have this further hyper simultaneous per science to appreciate, as they did before the campuses became criminally foreign influenced. And all syntax, everyone said, just like our founders communicated for us to understand. Even once George James Madison was a president / chief, also the only founder note that we know the name of specifically. But there were plural founders behind him and his plan. George Washington didn't have means to counter those internationally monitored conversations that had totally different colonies, more than 13 entrenched northern colonies and southern. Everyone had been roles with things like slavery. Native Americans against Native Americans. What kind of a unity could stand? And everyone had more and more, and has more and more things to blame things on that the breaching method caused and keeps. A breaching method is a scientific value replaced right from our founders' communications, James Madison, even though it's there. See, we have the names of the people of sciences using the knowledge of good and evil to want to have a debate about questions they can't afford the answers in relative to this. So the news also has roles, all kinds of medical corruption. People just have, in other words, and delusions that are relative, because these people have collusions with psychiatry, with criminally foreign influence takes on principles in American history, and as their roles self-guided, replacing and having replaced with their delusions, but also with their criminally foreign influences, fact-cheating nature, criminally foreign influence, fact-cheating nature, quality aspects in nature, not just, and tactically delusions wrought that we could observe this. Replacing James Madison's plan from where and how is the only correct answer. These are punks in the background, ones with badges and gavels, pretending things are debatable that are not. More and more, the breaching method shows them they have to hide lipoaggressions. They have to collude with all natures of crime scenes and next to them, preemptively too, including the news, even when it's not a crime scene. They have collusions. They have all kinds of natures of wire crime acts and methods. And they're going to speak about crimes. The interbranch have roles switching names and forging names. Falsified police reports. All kinds of scams. Everyone's speaking through others, and they're exploiting that consciously. That's recorded. They have their Facebook page involved. The British Superior Court has a principal being involved with them, with people with the name KERR and KNERR, and a whole bunch of DeMoro, Cololo. Further, Phil Cololo was involved with a Bob Chase with the Whiting Forensics, and others with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature, involved also with shopping centers. A bunch of people, Mike Levine is also brought in by his confessions and by the confessions of others. I never had a conversation with Mike Levine in my life. That has something to do, too, with their roles with the Wethersfield Shopping Center. Or not the Wethersfield Shopping Center, the other one, the one on off Town Line Drive. Increasingly, people, intelligence, foreign and domestic, from Central Connecticut State University, has people that have been planting evidences, sequence shifts, fake motivations, and screening their motivations. These are people that have roles with the names that were next to the World Trade Center attack, involved with Connecticut's collusions with the World Trade Center attack predicate acts. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack, including faked and changed conversations with my family, with them. They faked conversations with me about this because they have roles with people that have roles with murders and untimely deaths and body dumping spots. And this is all recorded. They have things confirmed to me too. A police chief, Cintron, has a whole bunch of people along Route 3 involved with that corner where Mazzucato Bakery is reportedly married into his family, a police chief, Cintron. From years before they were at that corner, a police chief, Cintron, had a bunch of people involved in intercampuses with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidence is planting, and then going to ask questions and then putting fake records in databases. These are people who have roles with the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut, but interstates. Increasingly, people with Washington, D.C., and have the World Trade Center have all kinds of organized crimes. with and scams with Social Security, and with use/s of everyone pretending things that are debatable that are not, and pretending things are not debatable that demonstrably are. See, but they're getting away with this because you guys were child abused at campuses A through Z, where this preaching method measures and maintains self-value collusion/s with its use/s at all locations/s, and then further relative to where there are databases. And simultaneously, the difference of guilt there at where their campuses are exceptions. But this is also a method multi-front on correlation nature, a method that knew we would have black pupils, whites of eyes, and that nature itself would be demonstrating to us. One of those things, all those crazy laws that little kids know, there was something wrong about them. One of the things they're all value as at the same time is a human fact treatment nature breaching method. So we should have things understood about this breaching method against Native Americans before our founders were born, and how our founders did not have free speech. And everyone had to pretend other to an extent, otherwise that body was censed. Also, it is recorded that people pretend that there is integrity to agencies offensively where they can't defend that and afford to have discern how we're, in other words, if you pay attention, A through Z have collusion/s, even with black pupils, whites of eyes, with syntax. But that is being used remotely by worse. And the prisons and the interbranch, increasingly, even when they're not involved with the cases, the ones putting all the fake things on both sides of the cases while the court is putting fake things at the same time in the news and names next to body dumping spots. These are the same names of the overt criminal enterprise and private ones. Now they're trying to pretend it's make it look like it's with their roles legitimately with acting professors. No, that's part of the methods they recorded. You guys got to get them onto paper. There's a detective, Samuda, who's one of the ones involved with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with Harper Courts and the Britain Superior Courts at West Hartford, and their families and intimate ties at West Hartford locations, collusions with people in intercities, and with Wethersfield locations. People and the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices have roles with a whole bunch of different countries, including the ones that are fighting with each other, where they have industries that are still criminally foreign influence, like psychiatry. Again, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, or I'm not even a doctor. We're going to delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, fact treatment nature, collusion/s, replacing what nature itself communicates with black pupils, whites of eyes, and replacing what our founders left declassified about how the breaching method reassigned. What nature communicates with black pupils, whites of eyes, when nature is not criminal insidious, only itself has criminal insidiousness nature. And nature demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that we are and have been using systems abridged from its own. Its own system nature shows us the value of the Constitution being unabridged. It shows us too, though, that means abridged from being able to appreciate syntactically or physically properly the human species volume science, distinct from, while non-distinct from, the individuals of its human species body, distinct from the groupings. And again, it's showing us that it's generating all group differences, or we're using systems abridged from its own. It's showing us that there are parts of the rest of its complete nature that are inseparable from its nature. Only the extent of this is debatable. And where how someone would try to debate it, their nature debate, and the fact you nature, quality aspects of nature, they're going to come with demonstrations of the same. They've been faking conversations with people about religions, too, on a mass scale. Like Hartford Hospital has a bunch of people with the name Leahy who fake conversations with me, who have roles with untimely deaths, also with people named Lombardo involved with sexual medical offenders of kids and people who've been putting fake things in databases behind my back and or as collusion slash S as ones with the collusions with all sides of criminal civil cases in an interbranch putting the same fake things at the same time and the news. So we need to get them to identify themselves legitimately into branch, and we need to get these talking heads. One of the in other words, I'm using their phrase too because they wouldn't want that to be used. They're leaving but they're leaving out the poor and hyper. This is interstates, people. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Watch how many scams. They owe more. There's only like 500 streets in Hartford. These people have been charging thousands and thousands of dollars a day just for one person to be in there for a few days. And they're forcing the people in there and then charging them. And the whole time they're covering up life regressions for their roles with their families too, with the houses and businesses next to the Hartford Hospital, involved with them with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people from all these different countries, cultures, religious spots, a bunch of fakes together. Where it counts, where everyone's forced to speak through others. You guys stay fakes. Then you pretend we're saying if everyone's evil. They put that in fake conversations with me. They said that I said that everyone's evil. Because there are a whole bunch of people that are guilty at the same time. That's not calling everyone evil, just call a bunch of people at the same time. In other words. But other ways, it's everyone. Because you guys are replaced with our founders. You have collusions against our founders. You don't want it. But everyone has lied to you since you were kids. So we're going to have to deal with also all kinds of medicines crimes and people on all involved with the store end of it, the people that deal with going to speak with it, like all kinds of ways. Collusion with medicines, with psychiatry, and ones with badges, with foreign and domestic. These are people collusions with untimely deaths 3 years apart, time use / estimate recorded. But that's also needing to appreciate things that were confirmed to me on Facebook that the police hid, like what I recorded them doing with sexual medical offenders of kids, leaders of them forced. New Britain Superior Court had collusions with that principal being through time. Also with people who planted evidences on all sides of my house, who have wire crime action methods of Wethersfield Police, with the FBI, and with the courts. And with the fake courts of New Britain Superior Courts, I got a Facebook pages, plural. Then they made a whole bunch of other ones with as collusions with foreign and domestic military and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and the family members and intimate ties of Harvard courts and the Britain Superior Court, involved with foreign and domestic military and people from Wethersfield at West Hartford locations, including the names next to a reported body dumping spot of a serial killer. And that reported serial killer is collusion / as the people, a whole bunch of people from other areas planted evidence on my street by you doing little tricks. Like there used to be a pond near my house. People used to go fishing, make it look like I had a conversation with them. And he even verified that the only 2 times I saw him there, I didn't respond to him, but I knew he was trying to plant evidences. And I recorded and I communicated that. Robert Rodriguez. In other words, I had nothing to do. I never had a conversation with Robert Rodriguez in real life, in person, in real life. I never saw him on a campus in my life. I don't even know what campus schools he went to. But he's rolls with the people who had the World Trade Center attack, named DeMoro and Scalora, and people from Saudi Arabia, involved with him too, with Mike Roberts and Daryl Chandler, people involved with state police families, interstates, and other agencies. There are some CIA or whatever there were other agencies. Even the transition from Homeland Security, from Immigration and Naturalization Services to Homeland Security, are people that had roles with the World Trade Center attack through other natures and methods of organized crimes, and saying and doing things at locations and or online pretending and trying to force things before courts they know already have collusion, before police forms that they know already would fake things. The Weathersfield police sought me out, if you pay attention, since I was a kid, threatening me and daring me not to speak with them. I never tried to speak with them. They wanted me to go plant evidences with Chris Walters and others involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, people involved with untimely deaths years apart, and people with private schools involved with public schools. Identity theft, fraud, saying putting fake things in database and acting tied to it, and context where no one's going to know, and they're lying about their motivations. Increasingly, these are people with these other nations in the news, including Russia, Ukraine. At the same time, collusions with people from Harvard Hospital, all kinds of social security scams, all kinds of scams against the legitimate health care there. These are also people with the security criminally pointed tactically delusions wrought too, and with the lawyers. All kinds of scams, all kinds of, all sides of criminal and civil cases. The interbranch, the intelligence, the lawyers, originally still were supposed to pay attention to this. You guys are going to relearn American history from that, abridged. We're directed to understand why and how James Madison is the only founder they had the security to let us know the name of. And then his plan involved them counter-extorting everyone else. You guys don't even allow anyone to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, or that would have brought this up. At founding locations A through Z in America, everyone has been self-valuing, telling for our founders. Then they were supposed to teach about those founding locations, like Webb House in Old Weathersfield, Connecticut, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now still, they have other communicated for that place than our founders left to be communicated for it. George Washington had to come there with James Madison's plan and the leverage behind him, plural, with the founders that we don't know the names of, and counter-extort and meet with the French general and explain how everyone was counter-extorted and forced to break the rules that even the generals weren't allowed to break. But then they should explain how everything was going to unfold, and everyone side's trying to defend themselves, so they broke it. So James Madison's plan also forced the world, too, to get a little more free. But we're also going to pay attention to the black, white, and exceptions, legal natures who had collusions with the slavery, and still teaching our campuses criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrong, at campuses A through Z, specifically to make people pretend. In other words, these are supposed to be mental reason experts. These are people putting drugs on people. All kinds of scams at Harvard Hospital and with the prisons. A whole bunch of people from Pakistan involved with Sandy Hook campuses, names, involved with crime scenes, with the principal being other sexual and medical offenders of kids, the serial killer, as the ones they had collusions with before they were in that place, and with the names next to the body dumping spots. Also, the reported body dumping spots of spots plural by the news and by Enzo Fienza made confessions and confirmed them on Facebook. He has rules with the state judicial branch offices. Also with his cousin, with people on Turrell Highway, involved with my fourth grade class, with the South Siviella, and people involved with him with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. And with this, like Eric Jensen and others with the intelligence communities on Turrell Highway, involved also with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with judges and prosecutors, and foreign overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and their collusions with untimely deaths. Brian Bonin also has roles with that, and with the Joe DeMauro Red Claw with the mescaline pills, and the wire crimes with the Weathersfield police, and the wire crime methods recorded, and what came before that too. I never saw a Brian Bourne in my life. I only know him seeking me out for that. And I called him and told him about the part of the with people. They said that they were filming him. I didn't tell my father that because he would have got in trouble. And the reason I told him that though is because I knew that there was going to be bad things against kids in the future, and I wouldn't be able to counter it if I didn't understand. I didn't know him. He saw only Brian Boner also has roles with foreign and domestic along Route 3. People named DeMoro and McCord are also with prosecutors, judges, and their family members, all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions have collusion /S. There are time use /S of that. People I never saw on campuses. They try to make a fake exception with a Mike Pandolf, the only class I had him in, and people involved with Washington, D.C., and medical corruption too, and collusions with him with all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions, as ones involved with overt criminal enterprise and private ones. His confessions, real or made up, about his roles with a gas station on Route 3. And he had a role, and someone was filming things, filming women through the thing. I never saw him around campuses. In other words, that was one of the times before where I was in that class with him. It was one of those fake exceptions. There are connections between people that make quick fake exception and ones that make fake ones that were totally fake, like a Joshua Julian, and on the Facebook page of the principal child abuser. Facebook has all kinds of collusions with organized crimes, and they're just being coached. The differences of their guilt, the family members that work with them, and the ones involved with the ad placements too, etc. All kinds of worse than hyper monopoly. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Get them off the face. A whole bunch of people with a Joshua Schumack recorded confessed them. I never saw Joshua Schumack in my life. Never saw him on a campus in my life. He's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and some people with medical and sexual offenders of kids, involved with his mother too, with the Facebook page of Wethersfield Police. And these Wethersfield Police faking transcripts and conversations. I never had a word of conversation in my life with the older Mendez police brother. He pretended other than one of the falsified police reports. They built multiple falsified police reports for the same arrest. They do this intercities too, involved with them. Get them on paper, one name and sequence.